Dear student, we will continue with the modern synthetic theory of evolution, and we were discussing the Hardy-Weinberg principle and how it is helpful in calculating the gene frequency. So, allele frequency is most commonly calculated using Hardy-Weinberg equation, which describes the relationship between the two alleles within population. Allele frequency can change over time as evolution act upon the population, and the population adapt by increasing or decreasing the frequency of certain alleles. Okay, so whenever there is change in the frequency of allele, that means there are chances of variation which are occurring. Okay, and when the variation is occurring means evolution is occurring, but when the variation is not occurring means evolution is not occurring. That means what? The allele frequency is not changing. Means what? The allele frequency is constant. Now look at this statement. In the population genetic, evolution is defined as the change in the frequency of allele in the population over a period of time. So, population genetic describes the evolution in terms of the allelic frequency. The Hardy-Weinberg equation is the mathematical equation that can be used to calculate the genetic variation of a population at equilibrium. 1908, Huxley Weinberg independently describe the basic principle of population genetics, and according to them the amount of genetic variation in a population will remain constant from one generation to another in the absence of disturbing factor, and it indicates that the gene frequency keep changing in the population which is evolving, but the one which is not evolving, their gene frequency is constant. Okay, so constant means no genetic variations are occurring, no frequency change. So let A and A both are alleles. Okay, and they are alleles and their allelic frequency is represented by P and Q. Okay, so the sum of these allele will be 1. Under what condition? Under the condition when the allelic frequency is not changing. Okay, or we can say homozygous condition, it is 1. So P plus Q is 1. Now when you square both the side, what will happen? P square plus 2PQ plus Q square. This is algebraic expression we have used. Okay, now if you do A square, it become P square. If you do small a square, it become Q square. So this represent why are we doing it? That means A dot A. A dot A means what? It is homozygous condition. So we can write A dot A as P square. A dot small a is Q square, and because we are here considering the homozygous form of allele. Okay, their sum is only 1 when we say the allele frequency is constant. So just by substituting them, we'll get this equation. Okay, if P and Q and allele frequency are known, then the frequency of 3 genotype may be calculated using Hardy-Weinberg. So when the allele frequency is 1, there is no frequency. But when it is different, we can always calculate their allelic frequency. So change in the frequency of gene in the population is called microevolution, and these changes are subtle and occur in very short span, maybe visible, may not be visible. So this is what is we mean by microevolution. Now next is the concept of genetic drift. Sewall-Wright effect, this is also known as Sewall-Wright effect, and this is pertaining to the small population because it is very well explained or seen or impact the small population. The sudden and random change in the allele frequency occurring in the small population by chance is called genetic drift. Okay, because larger is the size of a population, then more are the chances that there is less change in the frequency. Okay, so this changes by chance is called genetic drift. That means all of a sudden. It is described as the mechanism of evolution. Genetic drift is the evolutionary mechanism that produces random changes in the allele frequency in a population over a time. Now, although the genetic drift occur in a population of non-finite size, but its effects are strongest in small population. Genetic drift may result in the loss of or rise of allele frequency to 100% in some population. So, when the genetic drift occur, there may be loss of allele, there may be rise of allele, some allele to existing allele to 100%. Genetic drift not necessarily favor the individual that get best adapted to survive and reproduce, but so this is contradictory to natural selection. But it favors the population that will survive longest and reproduce the most. However, chance play role who survive, reproduce, and whose offspring survive to reproduce. So, what is this chance? Let's understand this. This is called sampling error. Now, first let's complete this. So, therefore, unlike natural selection, genetic drift does not depend on the allele beneficial or harmful effect. Instead, genetic drift changes allele frequency purely by chance. So, this is by chance. This is the evolution is occurring by chance. Okay, so by chance means there are two different effects which explain this phenomena. One is bottleneck effect and another one is founder effect. So bottleneck effect represents severe natural disasters. So this is by chance. It reduces size of population and reduces the genetic diversity. And founder effect represents splitting of population. The small group which gets splitted from the large population lacks the genetic diversity. So this splitting is also by chance factor. Now let's study the bottleneck effect. Bottleneck effect state that the sharp decline in the population, in fact in the gene pool, because of the environmental change, earthquake, drought, flood, etc., or disease, okay, or human factor are also contributing, such as deforestation, hunting. The environment fluctuation causes population to decline or crash. As a result, few survive and they may lack particular allele. These the survival will be responsible for the future generation. They only will have to reproduce. Okay, so the size of the second generation increases and again it may undergo population crash. So again there are certain allele loss. Such phenomena causes reduction in the allelic frequency and loss of some allele from the gene pool in random way. This is called bottleneck effect. So this is a bottle which represent original population of the allele green, blue, and let's say uh, red. So they are with different variant. They are different variant, you can say, in the population. So environmental fluctuation occur. Okay, so bottleneck means um, some of the population will crash, most of the population, because of the flood, and some will survive out of this flood. Okay, so this is called bottleneck effect. Now out of this surviving, a second bottleneck effect will occur and again some will survive. So finally, here you can see the blue is eliminated. Here you can see second bottleneck effect will occur and maybe the red or the green is eliminated. So many variations are eliminated. So that means so many alleles are lost from the gene pool. Okay, so the frequency of the genetic drift causes decline in the frequency of alleles. Okay, the next effect is called founder effect, and the founder effect is described as the loss of genetic variation that occur when a new population is established by daughter population from the parent population. So the small population migrate to the new geographical area and their gene pool may be homozygous for certain character, thereby lacking certain alleles. Okay, so the small population that gets separated is suppose it is homozygous, it is not heterozygous, so it is already lacking certain alleles. Okay, now when they reach new place, they behave as a founder population because they lay down the foundation for the next generation. The subsequent generation will lack the allele, and now they are different species as compared to the parent. Such effect is called founder effect. You can say this is original, then they get migrated to new area. So homozygous dominants are there. Now again, the daughter population and new species. So slowly and slowly, new species will have reduced genetic variation as compared to the founder. Okay, because in the subsequent generation they are deselected certain homozygous, because they are homozygous. So the one which are not dominating are deselected. Okay, so, founder population is the new colony started by a few member of original population, and this is original drifted population. You can say this is also an example of reproductive isolation, that few members from the here migrated, so they are reproductively isolated after some time. So the after subsequent generation, if you see, these new species will go back here, and they will not reproduce, interbreed with them. So this is also reproductive isolation. Okay, so today the African population has high frequency of the gene that causes Huntington disease. So this is one of the example, you can say, of founder effect. Okay, the African population of Dutch settlers in South Africa is descended mainly from the few colonists. Now, uh, I think, okay, I'll explain you natural selection on large population. The natural selection operate only on large scale according to neo-Darwinism. Natural selection is determined by reproductive success. Reproductive success depend on differential reproduction and survival. Differential reproduction means gene combinations which are best adapted to the environment and reproduce at higher rate and produce more offspring, and thus they contribute more gene to the gene pool of the population. So this is a new concept or modern version of the differential reproduction. The less adapted individual produces less number of offspring and contribute less number of genes to the gene pool. The natural selection act on genotype. The genotype in turn produces phenotype. When the phenotype produced by certain allele help in the organism survive and reproduce better than their peer, natural selection can increase their frequency of helpful alleles from one generation to an next, and this is what is we call as microevolution. So how the natural selection shift phenotype distribution? There are three different ways: directional selection, stabilizing selection, and disruptive selection. So we'll be discussing in next video these three different natural selection types. Thank you.